I want to read with you from Czerny's Piano School, Opus 500, Part 3, the pages 33, 34 and 35. And I hope you have the same pages before you, and otherwise you can read along with the video. I start with page 33, the 10th line with the word and. And as the crescendo and diminuendo must be executed by degrees and with a well-calculated increase and decrease in power. What is that? By degrees and with a well-calculated increase and decrease in power, that is, a well-thought-out becoming stronger and softer. So also it is with the accelerando and rallentando. So also a well-thought-out becoming faster and slower. A sudden change in slowness or quickness in single notes would in this case spoil the whole effect. From this example we see that the very same passage admits of several styles of execution of which none can properly be considered as contradictory. It would be a contradiction, for example, if we were to play this passage throughout forte and chorus, for the sense of propriety natural to the player and also the nature of that which precedes or follows, it must determine which sort is the most decidedly appropriate. It is particularly in ritardandos of considerable length that there is wanted peculiarly well-cultivated feelings and much experience. What is well-cultivated feelings and much experience? That is a question of culture. In what time you are, in this case, in the time of Czerny. A well-cultivated feelings and much experience in the time of Czerny, so around 1830 or 1835. And in order to know how far we can venture to extend in without becoming tedious to the hearer. When too these passages are to be repeated in several places in the same piece, the player is not only at liberty to employ each time a different style of execution, but it is even his duty to avoid monotony, and he has only to consider what sort is most proper in respect to what precedes or to what follows. That is a very important phrase. When there are repeated sections in several places in the same piece, the player is not only at liberty to employ each time a different style of execution, but it is even his duty. That is very important. So we may also search for difference in tempo, difference in piano or forte or crescendo of diminuendo or embellishments and so on. Now we go to the next, on the employment of the ritardando and accelerando. That is the most important thing I want to speak to you. The ritardando, according to the generally established rule, is much more, not more, but much more frequently employed than the accelerando, because the former is less likely to disfigure the character of the piece. So, since there are more ritenutos than accelerandos to be played in a piece, this means that the piece becomes longer. If there is the same amount of ritardandos and accelerandos, the result is that the piece becomes the same length. That is the mean of it. But here Czerny says the established rule is that the ritardando is much more frequently employed than the accelerando. That is very important, because the former is less likely to disfigure the character of the piece than the too frequent hurrying on in the speed of movement. We may retard the time most advantageously. Now he sums up a number of possibilities where we must make a ritenuto. A. In those passages which contain the return to the principal subject. B. In those passages which lead to some separate member of a melody. C. In those long and sustained notes which are to be struck with particular emphasis, and after which quicker notes are to follow. D. At the transition into another species of time or into another movement, different in speed from that which preceded it. E. Immediately after a pause. F. At the diminuendo of a preceding very little passage, as also in brilliant passages, when there suddenly occurs a thread of melody to be played piano and which with much delicacy. In embellishments consisting of very many quick notes which we are unable to force into the degree of movement first chosen. Occasionally also in the chief crescendo of a strong marked sentence, leading to an important passage or to the close. In very humorous, capricious and fantastic passages in order to hasten the character so much the more. And then we go to page 34. That is this page. K. Lastly, almost always where the composer has indicated an espressivo. Who is the composer? Is that Czerny? Or is that Beethoven? Or Bach? No, the composer is all composers from the time of Czerny. That is the composer. We can read also, lastly, almost always where the composer of our time has indicated an espressivo, as also L at the end of every long shake which forms a pause or cadenza, and which is marked diminuendo. It is of course understood that here under the term ritardando we mean to comprehend all other equivalent expressions which indicate a more or less marked slackening in the original degree of movement, as for example rallentando, ritenuto, smorzando, calando, etc., as they are only distinguished from each other by the more or less degree of ritardando. All these words mean slower, slower, slower. Now we come to a musical example. We shall insert an example on this subject. It is andantino espressivo. Czerny didn't give us a metronome mark, but we can choose it ourselves. Perhaps is 60, we can try it, 60 a good tempo for the quarter note. We can try it. Yes, that seems to me a good tempo. It is andantino e espressivo. And we've just read in the upper line under K, lastly, almost always where the composer has indicated an espressivo. And what does he mean with an espressivo? There may retard the time most advantageously. So we never make a play in a hurry. No, it has to be a very unstressed and flexible and calm piece. Now he gives very much explaining about this piece in page 35. The first bar must be played in strict time. So that's clear. In strict time with the metronome on 60. That is this tempo. That was the first bar. Number 2. The 3 last quavers of the second bar must be retarded very little, indeed almost imperceptibly, so as the next or third bar is a repetition of the first bar and therefore of the principal subject, though on other degrees of the scale. So on these notes we must play a very little ritenuto. I put out the metronome because we don't need it for this time. So these notes in bar 2, the last 3 quavers, must have a ritenuto. Then we read 3. The last somewhat arpeggiated chord in the third bar should be played rather ritenuto. Rather is more than a bit. That is this chord, the last chord in bar 3. That must be ritardando. Now I play from the last 3 notes of bar 2 and I play also bar 3. Now I play from the beginning. The last 3 notes of bar 2 has a crescendo and the first note of bar 3 is piano. That sounds like this. Now we are at number 4. The 3 last quavers in the 4th bar must execute it with somewhat more fire and therefore almost accelerando, which is again relinquished in the last 3 quavers of the 5th bar. So this note has a little accelerando. and also a crescendo. And the last quavers of bar 5 must have a ritenuto. And from bar 4 now we get 5. In the 6th bar is one of those embellishments consisting of many notes with which in a measure obliges us to employ a ritardando in both hands. Obliges means we must make a ritardando. We are free to make a ritardando. No, we are obliged to make a ritardando. In order that the quick notes may not be hurried and confused. What is confused? That is when they are blurred, but every note has to be heard. When I play in this way, then not every note is to be heard. That's almost in the tempo of the metronome. The metronome was at 60, that is this tempo. Dus when I play along with the metronome, you get this. You hear it is too fast. It is a blur. And now Wim Winters has always said, these notes must be played in tempo. And then he was counting all these notes and he said, you have to play 20 notes in 1 second. But no. Czerny says, those embellishments consisting of many notes, which in a measure obliges us to employ a ritardando in both hands, not alone in the right hand, but in the left also, in order that the twig notes may not be hurried and confused, but that they may flow gracefully and tenderly onwards. That are the words of Czerny himself, and not the words of Wim Winters. Only the last notes of this embellishment must be perceptibly retarded. Perceptibly, not a bit, but perceptibly. And on the last note but one, the G sharp, a kind of a short pause should be introduced. That is this note at the end of all these fast notes. Yam, padam. There we must a short pause. A short pause. It's a bit too much, but now I will play it a bit and I try it how Czerny it would play, perhaps. seconds perhaps, but it's much slower than the metronome, much slower. Now I play from bar 4, the last 3 quavers. Now we are in bar 7. Bar 7. Let's have a look. As Czerny says, with respect to the distribution of this long embellishment, as regards the bass, we will speak hereafter. So that comes. Number 6. The 7th and 8th bar are in strict time. But have a look at A in page 33. What does Czerny write here? In those passages which contain the return to the principal subject, we must retard. In bar 8, there is a return to the principal subject. Now the principal subject. So we have to make a ritenuto in bar 8. Bar 7 is in time. Now I play from the beginning until the double bar. Let's check the tempo. 60 is the quarter note. Now, where are we? 7. The 9th bar must be played with power and spirit, consequently almost accelerando, the 9th bar. That is the 9th bar. And the 10th bar, the second half of the 10th bar, somewhat tranquille. And turn the page back again and look at C. C in page 33. In those long and sustained notes which are to be struck with particular emphasis and after which quicker notes are to follow. In bar 10 there is such a note that is on the second beat. That is this note. And then we are the 10th bar. The second half of the 10th bar somewhat tranquil. This is the second half of the 10th bar. Now we are at bar 11. Let's have a look what Czerny says. The 11th bar somewhat retardando, and the last dissonant chord very soft and also something slower, because every dissonant chord, when it is marked piano, produces the best effect when played in this manner. That is curious. That is very curious. I've always learned that a dissonant chord must be played with an accent, with emphasis, and not only soft but stronger than the surrounding chords. But here it is very different. Perhaps this is a sort of playing during the Romantic period. I don't know. But we do it. The dissonant chord must be something slower, and because it produces the best effect when played in this manner, that is this chord. That is the fourth beat of bar 11. Soft and slow. Now I play from the double beat. Now we are at bar 12. That is 10. The 3-4 first quavers of the 12th bar in exact time. On the contrary, the last 5 quavers ritardando as they form the transition into the theme. The 3 first quavers in exact time. Let's have a check. This is the tempo. Yes, that's good. And the following notes with ritenuto. Bar 13. The 13th bar in time. That is this tempo. With a crescendo. Now we are at bar 14. The first crotchet in the 14th bar somewhat ritardando, which is increased in considerably in the second crotchet, and in which the 8 upper notes must be marked forte and crescendo. The first crotchet in bar 14. Somewhat ritardando. Yes, that is like this. Which is increased considerably in the second crotchet. That is this. And with a crescendo. Considerably, that is much ritardando. And now, the pause that is on the last note of bar 14 must last for about 5 quavers. That is a long time. That is very long. 5 quavers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the following run must be moderately fast, equal, tender and diminuendo, till ultimately the last 8 notes must be played with a marked ritardando. The last 8 notes of this run must be played with a marked ritardando. So this run, after the pause has 5 quavers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now we are at bar 15. Bar 15. The first half of the 15th bar in strict time. It is like this. Ta-dee-dee-da-dum. Is that a good tempo? Ta-dee-da-da-dum. Yes. Ya-dee-da-da-dum. That's good. The second half of bar 15th, ritardando, where the close of the embellishment must tell with extreme tenderness. Extreme tenderness. Czerny was a composer of extremes. Extremes, that is romantic. Czerny was a romantic composer. Now I play from bar 14. 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I have here the whole page with executions of Czerny read. And now the 2 following remarks must be carefully attended to. So we have read almost the entire page 35 with a lot of expression instructions by Czerny. Now there are 2 following remarks and they must be carefully attended to. 1, although in almost every bar of this theme a ritardando is introduced, yet the whole, particularly in the left hand, must be played so naturally, consecutively and unornamented that the hearer shall never be left in doubt as to the proper time or be annoyed by the uncertainty of it. What does that mean? Does that mean that the left hand must play according to the metronome, in the same tempo as the metronome? No, he must be played so naturally and unornamented that the hearer shall never be left in doubt. That is the core of it. The hearer shall never be left in doubt. The hearer must think that the movement is going on, but like a wave, not straight and like a machine. No, the hearer must go with the player in the same wave. And then he will not be annoyed by the uncertainty of it. That is what Czerny here means. Not the left hand must be played strictly in time, Now the left hand must be played so naturally, consecutively and unornamented that the hearer shall never be left in doubt as the proper time or be annoyed by the uncertainty of it. And still another important sentence, number two. As each part is to be played twice, on the repetition, the expression, and therefore each ritardando may be somewhat more marked, by which means the whole will gain in interest. So the ritardandos in the first time we make are good imperceptible, but the second time they may be somewhat more marked. As a result, the entire piece becomes even longer. Now, I'm going to play the whole piece. We check first the tempo. That is the quarter note. Perhaps it is nice for you to hear how the piece sounds when played in exactly the same tempo as the metronome. I will try it. how that sounds, and then you may make the conclusion what you like most. I tried to do my best. I hope you like it, or I hope you like the first performance. But this performance with metronome, the duration of this last performance is much shorter, and it seems if I play much faster, but it's not the truth. The truth is I take the same tempo, the quarter note is 60 in both interpretations, but now it seems if I play faster. And when you check a tempo of a CD, think about this. Don't think this player has to play the quarter note at 60, but he plays at 50 or perhaps still slower. And then you say, the player cannot reach this tempo. He has to play, the quarter note is 60, but he plays at 48. But now you know where from this comes. It comes because the player plays musically. That is the reason why most interpretations are shorter, are with a slower metronome number than the notated number in the piece. Well, that was it for today. I hope you has understand my explanation, and when you have questions, go ahead. I like your questions. Good, bye bye.